What is up, everybody? Noble Comics here to ask, can One Punch Man's punch break Captain America's shield? Now, this is going to be similar to the previous video that I did, which was, could Wolverine survive a punch from One Punch Man, right? Could his adamantium skeleton survive? And this is going to be similar, putting one of the strongest things in the Marvel Universe, Captain America's shield, up against One Punch Man. Now, what is Captain America's shield? Let's kind of get that out of the way. Because if you just watch the movies, which I think people are definitely more familiar with, you would think that it's just vibranium. But if you look at the comics, it's actually a vibranium and adamantium alloy. And even more than that, it's a particular type of Wakandan vibranium, and it's a particular type of proto-adamantium. So there's nothing really quite like it anywhere else. And this does make it more durable than just a standard vibranium shield, while also allowing it to absorb a lot of different energy attacks, like vibranium does. And from some official Marvel sources, we have more information on the shield, like they give the melting point of vibranium, which I think they say is 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. And they even said that the shield is indestructible except for like molecular rearranging, or I guess that would also be like reality rearranging attacks, which I don't think is quite how it's shown in the comics for either of those points. Just really quickly, we've seen Captain America like standing under a rocket thruster as it's taking off, blocking the immense heat with his shield, and the heat at liftoff from one of these rockets is way hotter than 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, based on what I could find. And it didn't melt, and you could say, well, that's because it's this alloy, whatever. But what I'm saying is the official sources on this from like the Marvel Handbook or whatever don't seem to really reflect what we see in the comics themselves. Because yes, Captain America's shield is one of the most durable things in Marvel Comics, right? We've seen it take beatings from Hulk and Thor and pretty much everybody and everything, from bullets to missiles to lasers to what have you. But we've also seen Captain America's shield break a few times. Now, most of the time when we see his shield break, it's from like an alternate universe or like an alternate reality, but we have seen it break in mainline continuity a few times. But for the record, I will be looking at more than just mainline continuity, even though it technically isn't like canon to 616 Captain America. I think it can still give an insight to what are the limitations of the shield itself. So for example, talking about like reality warping or like molecule rearranging, we have seen Molecule Man like evaporate Captain America's shield. We've seen Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet just be able to swat his shield away and shatter it. And we've seen Doctor Doom, whenever he had the power of the Beyonders, he was able to melt Captain America's shield as well. But I feel like all of that's a given, right? When you're at that level of power, you can pretty much destroy anything. But what about actual attacks, right? Actual attacks that aren't warping reality or like destroying the shield on a technicality. What about just blunt force? Well, we've seen Thor do some damage to Captain America's shield more than once. In his King Thor form, where he's sort of at his most powerful, we've seen him be able to melt Captain America's shield, very similar to whenever he melted Wolverine's adamantium. And again, this is like a multiversal, if you want to say like outerversal, extremely powerful version of Thor who was able to do this, so it's really no surprise. But in the Ultimates universe, we saw Thor just smack Captain America's shield really hard, and it managed to dent it. Didn't break it, but it did manage to dent it, and then he was actually able to use his hammer to undent it as well, which should just speak to the power behind those blows. And we do know Thor, right, is capable of delivering a universal level attack, right, like we saw him do against Celestials and stuff like that. And what we most often see with the broken shield is like whenever we're seeing a alternate reality where things have gone bad, that's usually like they'll show that like in the background or something, Captain America's shield being broken. And we kind of got that with the alternate reality where Ultron won. We saw Captain America's broken shield, but we don't really know how that came about. Same thing with the King Hyperion alternate storyline, where King Hyperion took over and defeated and killed everybody. We see Captain America's shield has like chipped or taken damage. So we're assuming that he was able to deliver out enough power to be able to do that. And again, he'd be one of those characters who's like in the Sky Father plus category, I guess. And in one storyline, we see it seems to allude that Iron Man has melted through Captain America's shield, though that seems kind of unrealistic, right? Unless you want to say like it was a heat thing where he was able to apply enough heat to melt through it. But again, based on kind of what we've seen actually in practice versus sort of the handbook thing, I don't really think that would be the case. But probably like the most famous Captain America shield break, other than maybe Thanos, was during the Fear Itself storyline, which was a big storyline for a lot of reasons. But in the Fear Itself storyline, we did see an Asgardian God just manhandle Cap's shield and just shatter it with his bare hands, which is like unprecedented. We haven't seen that before, and we really haven't seen that since. Though it does make sense because Mr. the Serpent here is actually Odin's older brother, and Odin is immensely powerful on his own. It seemed to rival Galactus at times. So it would make sense that if this character, the Serpent, is around that same power level, him shattering the shield is not out of the question. And we know that he's shown to be, far above people like the Hulk, who he sort of controls during that storyline. And then One Punch Man on the other side. As I've talked about before in my videos, One Punch Man, I'm going off of like the most impressive thing that we've seen so far, right? Like, I know he's got infinite potential and he's always getting stronger, yada yada. And at some point he will be, X powerful, the most powerful punch a multiverse type thing. But as he's been shown at his most powerful so far, we look at the Cosmic Fear Garo fight, and again, towards the end of that fight, right, when they were fighting out in outer space, we saw One Punch Man be able to rip the surface off of a moon with one hand. We saw him sneeze and like obliterate half of Jupiter. And probably the most powerful thing we saw is him and Garo traded serious punches, where like they, their fists hit each other. And the force caused by that attack was redirected and blew up, however many countless star systems, where you could just see a void in space where these star systems used to be. Again, putting him at, multi-solar system level, if not galaxy level. Again, if you want to say by the end of the fight, he was even more powerful because we know that he was growing exponentially more powerful during that fight. I would talk about his character more, about how like, oh yeah, he can defeat anything in one punch. And that was sort of the early character, right? He's defeating everybody in one punch. But he has just been getting more and more powerful as the series went on, particularly right with this arc with Garo, where we saw him at his most powerful there during that fight. Which again was one punch, knocking out, multiple solar systems at once, and then growing exponentially stronger from that point, where I don't think it is unreasonable to say that he was galaxy level by the end of it. And I get it. People always say, well, the whole idea of the character is that he's more powerful than anybody, and he's got infinite strength, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. He's more powerful than anybody in the One Punch Man universe. Outside of that, that doesn't really mean much. And I think right now, the fair thing to say about One Punch Man is that he has infinite potential, right? Not necessarily infinite strength just yet, but infinite potential. So if we put him as he is now, at his most powerful, and we give him one serious punch to see if he can shatter Captain America's shield, what would happen? Well, if we just take main continuity 616 Captain America and his shield, I think his shield holds up no problem. Because here's the thing. It's been shattered, 5 times maybe in its entire history? And 4 out of those 5 times were reality warping or molecule warping or something like that, where, Molecule Man evaporates it, or Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet shatters it. Something like that. Except for that Fear Itself storyline, where the Serpent, which I think his real name is Cole, just manages to rip it in half and destroy it. And the justification for that being that he is Odin's older brother, which we're assuming means he's more powerful than Odin, which puts him at multiversal bare minimum as far as power level goes. So again, it's not necessarily unreasonable that he was able to do that. But you compare that to One Punch Man, who can't warp reality, who can't warp molecules. I know some people say well, he can time travel. That's technically warping reality. And it's well, 1, that's different. It doesn't affect him breaking the shield. And 2, he time traveled once and then he forgot how to do it, so we can't time travel anymore. But more importantly, One Punch Man is just not on that level right now. He is not a multi-universal or outer-versal level character right now, which seems to be the power level required to shatter Captain America's shield in the main continuity. if we want to open it up again, kind of like I did at the beginning, and we're considering this multiverse of Captain Americas and sort of all the times that their shields have broken throughout their history, then I definitely think that there is a chance. Because here's the thing, we've seen, again, we have to kind of interpret some of these things, right? But Ultron destroy the shield. King Hyperion destroy the shield. We've seen Thor dent the shield, even though in other times we see Captain America tank Thor's hits, tank Hulk's hits, whatever. In this case, Thor could do it. Again, it seems to imply here that Iron Man destroyed his shield. So is there some, alternate Ultimates universe or something out there where One Punch Man throws a serious punch and the shield dents in or the shield shatters, something like that? Absolutely, I think that that's the case. But the mainline shield probably tanks the hit, absorbs most of that kinetic energy, and is perfectly fine. But as always, let me know what you think. Do you think that One Punch Man could shatter Captain America's shield? Or do you think that the shield itself would hold up? Is there any other sort of scenario or anything that you would want me to make a video on? Please do let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.